My name is Alara Wynn, 14 years old. The air in Dad's sedan felt like a winter coat I couldn't take off, heavy, itchy, stitched with words we weren't saying. Condensation spidered across the passenger window where my breath met cold glass, turning our neighborhood into streaks of gray and red taillights. My backpack sat upright between my shins like a polite guest, zipper grinning with the few things I'd been told to bring for a little trip to sort things out. Will we be back before Monday? I asked, trying to sound casual, as if my voice could pretend us back to normal. I've got my history presentation, the Civil War one I told you about. Dad's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel, the tendons in his hands taut like cables. You'll figure it out, he said. I pressed my forehead to the window's cool, the glass humming with the engine's vibration. This tone wasn't the dad who used to help me hot glue stars onto a cardboard galaxy while we ate burnt microwave popcorn. This was the new version, the one that appeared after he married Sharon 6 months ago, as if he'd stepped into a suit that didn't fit but refused to take off. Can you at least tell me where we're going? I tried again. He exhaled hard. Give me a minute, Ilara. A minute stretched. I found the coffee taste I'd swallowed at Mom's earlier, bitter and thin. She'd been face down on the couch when he came to pick me up, the city of empty bottles around her catching the light. He'd looked at the mess and said nothing, just a tight sound in his throat that wasn't quite a sigh. By the time I recognized the skyline ahead, dread brightened beneath my ribs. The train station rose from the street like a movie prop. Red brick, iron-rimmed clock, banners fluttering with places I'd never been. Dad pulled into the drop-off lane and killed the engine without looking at me. The sudden quiet felt like a decision. Are you coming in? I asked, already knowing the answer and begging it to be different. He popped the trunk. Grab your bag. In the wind outside, November bit through my jacket, the one Sharon said made me look like a lost and found. I stumbled after Dad to the trunk. He lifted my backpack and shoved it into my arms like it weighed more than it did. His eyes kept flicking to the glass doors, to the clock, to anything that wasn't my face. Dad. The word came out small, like a coin dropping down a well. He leaned in as if to kiss my forehead, then thought better of it and stepped back. You're old enough to figure things out, he said. Figure what out? My laugh scraped raw. You haven't even told me. I saw them then. Through the glass doors, under the string of holiday lights, Sharon stood with her perfect hair and colder smile, one hand resting on Brittany's shoulder. Brittany was 12 and already knew how to look at the world like it should apologize to her. Connor, 8, hunched over a phone game, thumbs moving like two little fish. The picture they made looked like a brochure, family, curated. My scalp prickled. What is this? Dad swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing as if what he wanted to say had sharp edges. He didn't answer me. He looked past me. Then he walked away. Dad, it came out too loud. An older man in a neat coat glanced over with a frown. Dad reached the doors, and they parted for him like he'd earned it. I took a step, then two. Sharon turned, took him in with that look she saved for wins. He put his hand at her waist, and something inside me shifted off its foundation. He bent to ruffle Connor's hair the way he used to ruffle mine. I waited, stupidly, for him to say my name like a tether. Dad, you didn't give me a ticket, I called, tinny inside the vaulted space. The door's side shut behind him. He did not turn. The station swallowed sound and returned it magnified. High heels ticking, suitcase wheels rattling, a child's squeal rising and falling like a gull. Overhead, the clock marked 3:47 p.m. I stood there holding my breath and my backpack and the shape of a conversation we weren't having. Any second now, any second he'd remember the thing he'd forgotten. Me. A station guard approached with careful kindness, his name tag reflecting in the light. Miss, are you waiting for someone? My dad, I said, automatic. He'll be right back. His eyes moved over the details, the way my backpack strap cut into my shoulder, the way my hands kept finding each other and not fitting. He nodded toward a row of metal benches near the ticket windows. Would you like to sit while you wait? I sat because my knees had started to shake. A girl across the concourse dropped a pretzel. Her mother laughed and bought her another. A couple kissed like they had all the time in the world. A boy balanced a cello case on one knee and checked his watch. Every direction I looked, people belonged to someone or somewhere. The bench was cold through my jeans. I opened my backpack to inventory reality. One change of clothes, wrinkled from being shoved in. A phone charger, a hairbrush missing half its teeth. The history textbook. My presentation circled in pink highlighter. A granola bar dusty with age. In the front pocket, the emergency money. A crumpled $20 bill I'd been saving from babysitting. It looked like a joke now, stage money left behind by a magician. I shut the bag and watched the doors. Sharon's coat flashed gold as they exited to the street. Brittany turned just enough to see me, her expression a flicker. Pity? Satisfaction? And then it was gone. Dad never looked back. He put his hand on Sharon's back, guiding her the way he used to guide me across busy parking lots. They became figures, then shapes, then weather. I breathed once, twice, as if this were a trick that required stillness to reverse. Minutes layered themselves like frost. 5, 10, 20. The clock stuttered forward in a language I suddenly hated. I took the granola bar out and peeled it slowly, listening to the wrapper's papery crinkle like it might be a signal. The first bite tasted like chalk and glue, but it kept the burn in my stomach from turning into knives. When the tears came, they weren't performative. They were practical, cleaning something from my eyes so I could see the thing in front of me. The space he'd left where a father should be. A woman in a purple coat sat 2 feet away without asking, the exact distance that says I see you without pressing. She wrapped both hands around a paper cup, steam haloing her fingers. "Are you all right?" she asked softly, the question shaped like a blanket. "My dad left me," I heard myself say. "He just left me here." Her mouth tightened in a line that wasn't unkind. "How old are you, sweetheart?" 14. She reached into her bag and retrieved a tissue packet, the kind with daisies on the plasticky front. "Would you like me to sit with you while you wait?" I nodded because I could do that, and she did sit, not speaking unless I spoke first. People flowed around us like a river reorganizing itself around a rock. My phone vibrated in my pocket with the itch of a notification, and I pulled it out. The cracked screen showed 4:15 p.m. The station's high windows had begun to capture the early dark and hold it. I turned the phone over and over in my hands, as if friction could make it useful. The names in my contacts list became little doors I didn't want to open. Mom would be sleeping it off until tomorrow. Emma was in Florida with her family, and I could hear the beach in the background of that call I wouldn't make. Everyone else was school nice, not station necessary. I let the phone dim, then sleep. A family walked past in a chain, the dad lifting the youngest onto his shoulders in one smooth, practiced motion. The little girl's sneakers knocked gently against his chest. It was such a small, ordinary thing that my breath snagged. I remembered Dad teaching me to ride a bike, one hand on the seat, one on the handlebar, the way he'd jog alongside until I wobbled into balance. He'd said, "I've got you," and for a while that had been true. Now I tried to remember the last time he'd said my name like it meant mine. I could remember the last time Sharon had said it, carefully, like she was rolling it in her mouth for defects. "Ilara," she'd mused at Thanksgiving. "Sounds like a longing. Someone should have picked a stronger name." I touched the history textbook's spine, grounding myself in something that had nothing to do with her. All those dates and names and battles. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like the wrong parts of history kept repeating, because people rewrote the parts that hurt. A laugh bubbled out of me without humor. "He's going to come back," I told the woman, though I wasn't sure whether I was telling her or testing the taste of the lie. "Then we'll see him," she said, like a promise she could keep. Time did what it does. 4:38. 5:02, 5:19. Announcements chimed. Delayed, now boarding, final call. Each one sounded like an option. Some other version of me might have taken. The bench pressed a pattern into the backs of my thighs, little ovals I could feel even through denim. The purple coat woman offered me a sip of her coffee. I shook my head. Coffee would keep me awake later, and I was already too awake. I began counting breaths, 4 in, 6 out, something my 5th grade counselor taught me the year everything started to fray. It steadied the ocean in my ears enough that I could parse the station's symphony, the echo of shoes, the roll of a suitcase zipper, a baby's hiccuping cry, the clack of the departures board flipping letters. Dad did not appear between the letters. I tried to build him from memory the way you rebuild a toppled tower, piece by piece. The laugh, the sunburned nose, the way he'd sing wrong lyrics on purpose until I corrected him. Then the other pieces elbowed in. The sneer when he looked at Mom's empties, the way he'd stop looking at me mid-sentence once Sharon entered a room, the phrase he'd started using when I asked too many questions. Just stop. What if this was the plan? Whispered a voice that sounded unhelpfully like mine. What if sort things out meant move you off the board? The thought clicked into place with a quiet, awful certainty, like a key sliding home. I stood and craned my neck to see the drop-off lane outside. Cars idled, doors opened. The little choreography of arrival and departure played again and again without him. I sat. I stood again. My legs were restless, my hands colder than they should be. Would you like me to get a station attendant? The woman asked. Not yet. I swallowed. My throat felt bruised. He said he'd be right back. She looked at me as if measuring whether the truth would help or harm. Sometimes, she said finally, people tell us who they are by leaving. I stared at the clock face until the numbers blurred, then refocused. 5:41 p.m. If I left the bench, I was worried he'd come back and miss me. If I stayed, I was worried I'd be the one who missed something I should have done, some lever I should have pulled to reverse the trick. The station lights warmed as the outside dimmed. Somewhere a musician tested a saxophone, 2 uncertain notes that turned into a melody, before stopping abruptly as if someone had told him no. I could feel the edge of panic, bright as a match held too close. I wrapped both hands around the strap of my backpack and held on until the stitch dug into my palm. Any second now, I told myself, and felt the first real tremor of knowing. Any second now. The bench was unforgiving, all angles and chill steel, but I stayed welded to it, afraid to move in case some invisible string tied me to the door and snapped if I wandered too far. Around me, the station had its own weather system. Gusts of laughter, storms of suitcases clattering across tiles, sudden silences when a whistle blew. But inside my body, there was only waiting. I tried to anchor myself with small tasks. I counted the bolts along the floor edge, traced the cracks in the ceiling where paint had surrendered, watched the pigeons pacing with bureaucratic self-importance near the cafe. My backpack slumped like a tired dog at my side. The purple-coated woman was still next to me, her cup empty now, but her presence steady. Shouldn't he be back by now? My voice wobbled like a tightrope walker. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she smoothed her gloves, thoughtful. Sweetheart, sometimes we wait for people long past the moment they've decided not to return. I flinched, too sharp, too soon. You don't know him. Her eyes softened. Maybe not, but I know that look. I turned away, unwilling to let her kindness split me open. Families streamed past in cinematic frames, hugging, waving, gathering children like luggage. I couldn't stop staring at the fathers. The way they adjusted backpacks on smaller shoulders, the way they hoisted toddlers without thinking, the way their children leaned into the contact like it was the most natural thing in the world. I closed my eyes, willing myself not to cry again, but tears disobeyed. They carved hot lines down my face, each one a confession. I hated crying in public. It felt like leaving my diary open on the kitchen table. The purple-coated woman reached out, hesitated, then laid a hand lightly on mine. Do you have someone to call? I blinked at her, then at my cracked phone screen. The list of names was short and useless. Mom, likely unconscious until morning. Emma, my best friend, who was probably posting pictures of seashells in Florida. Teachers whose numbers were for emergencies, but not this kind. What label would I even use? My dad abandoned me, didn't have a drop-down option. Then my eyes caught a name I had scrolled past countless times, hovering between delete and keep. Helen, Grandma, Dad's mother, the woman he hadn't let me see in 2 years after some feud about money and meddling. But before the feud, there had been Saturday afternoons of cookies cooling on racks, rainy days filled with card games, her laugh like gravel rolling in a tin but warm. My thumb trembled over the screen. Could I? Should I? The purple-coated woman seemed to sense the battle. Call her, she urged gently. I'll sit right here with you until you do. So I pressed the number. Once, twice, 3 rings. I almost hung up. Hello? The voice was exactly as memory stored it. Firm, warm, aged whiskey poured over velvet. Grandma? My throat nearly closed around the word. It's Ilara. A sharp intake of breath. Ilara, darling, what's wrong? Where are you? The dam broke. Words tumbled over one another. Dad, He left me at Central Station. He's gone, and I don't know what to do. I don't have a ticket. I don't have. Stop! Her voice sliced panic cleanly in half. Which station? Central, downtown. Are you safe? Is anyone bothering you? There's a nice woman sitting with me. She told me to call you. Good. Stay right there. Don't move. Don't go with anyone else. I'm coming. 90 minutes, maybe less. And Alara, this is not your fault. Whatever your father told you, hear me now. None of this is your fault. The line clicked dead, but her words echoed in me, loud enough to fight back the noise of the station. The purple-coated woman squeezed my shoulder. She's on her way? I nodded, breath still uneven. Good. Then you're not alone anymore. Not alone. The phrase landed strangely, like a coat someone draped over me that was warm but didn't quite fit yet. The hours staggered forward. I ate the rest of the granola bar crumb by crumb, sipping water from the fountain by the restrooms. The purple-coated woman bought me fries from the cafe when my stomach roared louder than the announcements. I thanked her with a voice too small for the size of the gift. She stayed until her train was called. Will you be all right until your grandmother arrives, Janeo? She asked. I think so. She pressed a folded napkin into my hand. Her phone number was scrawled in hurried pen. If you change your mind, call me. Then she was gone, swallowed by the crowd, leaving behind the faint scent of lavender and coffee. I sat straighter now, backpack hugged to my chest. For the first time since the car ride, hope sparked beneath the rubble. Grandma was coming. 90 minutes. 90 minutes wasn't forever. Still, the minutes crawled. 6:14. 6:48. The station was thinning. Families dispersing into cars, buses, and trains. Fluorescent lights hummed louder in the emptier spaces. Security guards paced in predictable loops. Shadows stretched long across the floor. Every sound raised my pulse. Footsteps approaching, doors hissing open, a voice over the loudspeaker. Each one could be her. And then it was. Elara! I turned, and there she was, her coat a dark plum, her stride swift despite her years. Behind her, 2 men in suits carried briefcases, moving like bodyguards or lawyers or both. She looked taller than I remembered, maybe because I was seeing her from the bottom of the pit I'd been dropped in. She knelt to pull me into her arms, and the scent of her perfume, gardenias, always gardenias, wrapped around me like home I didn't know I still had. I've got you, she whispered, words my father hadn't said in years. I buried my face in her shoulder and believed her. The moment her arms closed around me, the noise of the station softened, like someone had turned the volume down on the whole world. My grandmother's perfume, gardenias, wrapped itself around me, and for the first time all day, I could breathe without it catching in my chest. I've got you, Alara, she said again, her voice steadier than my heartbeat. When she pulled back, she studied me with eyes sharp as cut glass, scanning for injuries, for lies, for anything my father might have left behind besides fear. Satisfied that I was physically whole, she stood, taking my hand firmly in hers. 2 men flanked her, tall, brisk, carrying slim leather cases that clicked with every step. They didn't feel like family. They felt like reinforcements. Who are they? I whispered. Friends, Grandma replied, tone clipped. The kind who make sure certain mistakes don't happen again. The words puzzled me, but before I could ask, she steered me toward the exit. The automatic doors parted, spilling us into the night air. It smelled of rain on concrete and exhaust, but her presence made it feel less hostile, less like I was prey in a city that didn't care. Her car waited at the curb, sleek and black, the kind of vehicle I'd only seen on TV. A driver in a dark suit opened the back door for us. The gesture felt like a scene I wasn't supposed to be in. I hesitated. This isn't your car, is it? Grandma gave me a small smile. It is now. Get in. Inside, the leather seats were butter soft, swallowing me whole. I gripped my backpack like a lifeline, not ready to let go of the one piece of my life that still felt mine. The city outside blurred as the car pulled away. Streetlights flashed like metronome ticks, marking the time between questions I wanted to ask but couldn't quite form. Finally, I blurted, "Where are we going? Your house, Jeanette, isn't this way." She turned her face toward the window, her reflection as composed as marble. "We're going home, Ilara, truly home." Something in her tone carried weight, vindication, maybe even satisfaction. The driver took us through parts of the city I'd only glimpsed from bus windows. Long boulevards lined with ancient trees, houses set far back with manicured lawns, iron gates glinting under discreet security lights. We turned into one of those gates. They opened automatically, like they knew her, like they'd been waiting. The driveway curved through landscaped gardens, lit with subtle golden glows. Water whispered somewhere, a fountain maybe. And then the house appeared. No, not a house, an estate. 3 stories of stone and brick rose against the night sky, its windows tall and gleaming, its entrance crowned with a chandelier visible even from the car. I sucked in a breath that stuck halfway. "What is this place?" "This," she said simply, "is where I live, where you should have been all along." I thought of the cramped apartment with peeling paint and the paper-thin walls at Mom's, of Sharon's disdainful smile when she called my jacket charity clothing, of Dad's endless complaints about money, bills, debts. None of those fit into this picture, where every shadow looked expensive. A man in a gray suit, Mr. Chen, I later learned, was already waiting at the top of the steps. "The preliminary paperwork is ready by morning, Mrs. Hartley," he said, his voice low but efficient. "Emergency custody has been filed." "Thank you, James," Grandma replied. She turned to me, with a softness she hadn't shown anyone else. "Don't worry about the details, darling. You're safe now." Inside, the house was overwhelming. Marble floors polished to mirrors. A sweeping staircase curved upward like a question mark. Paintings lined the walls, oil portraits, landscapes that belonged in museums. Every corner whispered of wealth and history. A woman in a crisp uniform appeared immediately, her posture straight, her accent faintly Spanish. "Welcome home, Mrs. Hartley. Shall I prepare the blue room for Miss Alara?" "Yes, Rosa," Grandma said. "And please arrange a light dinner for us in the family dining room. Something comforting. Chicken soup, perhaps." "Of course, ma'am." My legs moved on their own as Grandma led me deeper into the house. Each step carried the weight of disbelief. I remembered the modest suburban house she'd lived in before, the one with creaky floors and a garden that smelled of tomatoes. This wasn't that. "This isn't the house I remember," I murmured. "No," she admitted, pausing to look at the grand staircase as though it, too, held memories. "That was where I lived when I was pretending to be smaller, poorer, easier, so your father wouldn't feel threatened." "Threatened by you?" The idea seemed absurd. My father had always talked about her like she was meddlesome, not dangerous. Her lips curved, not in humor, but in something sharper. "Your father has always been threatened by anyone who saw through him." I didn't know how to respond. My world had been flipped twice in one day, once when Dad walked away, and again when Grandma revealed this life hidden in plain sight. At dinner, she poured herself wine and me fresh-squeezed orange juice. The dining room could have fit my entire apartment. Chandelier, spilling rainbow light across the table. The chicken soup Rosa brought smelled like heaven itself, warm and steady, grounding me in a way words couldn't. "I imagine you have questions," Grandma said, breaking bread with precise fingers. I nodded, my appetite returning with each bite. "All of this, why didn't I know?" She looked at me, eyes weary with secrets. "Because your father never wanted you to." Her words dropped into me like stones into water, rippling outward, hinting at deeper truths waiting to surface. And I had the sinking feeling that my father's betrayal was only the beginning of what I was about to discover. The spoon trembled in my hand, clattering against the bowl as Grandma's words sank in. "Because your father never wanted you to. She didn't even soften it, didn't cushion the blow with excuses." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice unsteady. Grandma leaned back, glass of wine cradled like it held memories instead of liquid. "Your grandfather, my husband, was not the simple insurance man your father painted him to be. Robert built an empire, Ilara. He started with nothing, clawed his way up, and by the time he passed, he was worth nearly 80 million. The number was so big it sounded fake, like monopoly money. 80 million? She nodded. He structured it carefully too. Trusts, protections, conditions, some for me, some for charities, and a very specific portion, 10 million, for you. My lungs forgot their job for a second. Me? Yes, to be accessed when you turn 18, or earlier, under certain circumstances. Education, marriage, or, she paused, eyes sharpening, if you were ever abandoned or endangered by your legal guardians. My spoon slipped, soup dripping onto the linen tablecloth like a blot of evidence. Dad knew about this? Oh, he knew, Grandma said, her smile brittle as glass. He's known since the will was read. He received $5 million immediately. It should have been enough to build a life, to care for you, to start anew. But Richard, your father, he burned through it in 3 years. Bad investments, lavish spending to impress Sharon and her friends, country clubs, cars, vacations. I gripped the table edge until my knuckles paled. Images flickered. Dad's disdain when Mom couldn't pay bills, his lectures about sacrifice, his constant sighs about making do, all while he'd had millions. So when it was gone, Grandma continued, he came to me, demanding more, demanding access to your trust. The soup turned to ash in my mouth, and you said no. Of course I said no. That money is yours, and I refuse to be manipulated. She leaned forward, voice lowering. He didn't forgive me. Not for keeping the money from him, and not for keeping my eyes on you. He cut me out, forbade me from seeing you. He would rather erase me than be reminded of his own failure. My chest ached with betrayal, sharp and constant. Dad hadn't just walked away from me at the station. He'd been walking away for years, step by step, lie by lie. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Because he had custody, she said quietly. If I pushed too hard, he might have disappeared with you entirely. I had to wait. Watch, gather evidence. Her eyes glinted. Prepare for the day he made a mistake big enough to ruin him. I never dreamed it would be this cruel. The room seemed to expand, its marble and crystal echoing truths I wasn't ready for. 10 million. My father's hunger. My grandmother's quiet war. Grandma, my throat felt raw. He didn't just abandon me. He sold me out. For money. Her hand, veined but strong, reached across the table and clasped mine. Yes, darling, but understand this. He didn't destroy you. He freed you. And now, we will make sure he never touches your future again. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the warmth of her hand with the steel in her words. This wasn't the cookie-baking grandmother I remembered. This was someone else entirely, a woman who had been waiting, planning, biding her time like a general before battle. Somewhere deep inside, fear tangled with something else, a spark. The first flicker of rage that belonged to me, not to the story he'd written for me. Upstairs, the blue room awaited me. Rosa had turned down the bed, fresh pajamas laid out like a welcome gift, soft light spilling across the window seat. The closet door stood ajar, revealing clothes in my size, as if someone had known I'd be coming. I sat on the bed, hands in my lap, the letter Grandma had pressed into them still unopened. Its envelope was yellowed with time, the handwriting shaky but deliberate. For Ilara when she is old enough to understand. It was my grandfather's hand. My fingers hovered over the seal, the weight of legacy and secrets pressing down. I wasn't sure if opening it would answer questions or birth new ones, but I knew one thing. The story I'd been told about my family was a lie. And the truth, whatever it was about to change everything. I sat cross-legged on the blue room bed, the letter from my grandfather unopened in my lap. Moonlight filtered through the tall windows, silvering the edges of the furniture, casting me in a glow that made everything feel staged, unreal. Downstairs, faint murmurs rose from Grandma and the men with briefcases. Mr. Chen and his associates, like the hum of machinery cranking into motion. For the first time in hours, I wasn't crying. I wasn't even trembling. What I felt was empty, hollowed out. My father's face kept flashing in my mind. That moment he turned from me at the station doors. He had looked relieved, like he had just unloaded excess baggage, like I had never been his daughter at all, just a liability standing in the way of the life he wanted. I didn't open the letter that night. I wasn't ready. Instead, I slid it under my pillow and lay awake, my eyes burning as I stared at the ceiling. The next morning, my grandmother's house felt less like a home and more like a command center. Rosa appeared with breakfast on a tray, warm croissants, fruit arranged like a painting, a glass of fresh juice. I wanted to shrink into myself, but Grandma swept into the room before I could even mutter thanks. She was dressed sharply, pearls at her neck, eyes sharper than I remembered. "Eat," she ordered, though her voice softened a fraction. "We have a busy day ahead." "A busy day?" I repeated, blinking. "You didn't think we'd let your father's betrayal stand unchallenged, did you?" She sat at the edge of my bed, her perfume a wall of familiarity and steel. "Ilara, He left you on a station bench like unwanted luggage. That act isn't just cruel, it's illegal, and we will hold him accountable." The croissant turned to ash in my mouth. I wasn't ready for legal words, for the gravity they carried. But Grandma didn't slow down. By mid-morning, I was in what she called the war room, a sprawling conference space where polished mahogany tables were already littered with files, laptops, and piles of documents. Mr. Chen gestured toward a chair at the head of the table. "Sit. You need to understand exactly what we're preparing for." I sat, small among the stacks of paper, feeling like a witness to a world I hadn't been meant to enter. On one wall, financial charts glared back at me, each red line a trail of my father's recklessness. He had drained bank accounts, sold assets, opened credit cards in my name. That revelation landed like a fist in my gut. What? Identity fraud, Mr. Chen said flatly. He began when you were 12, small purchases at first, electronics, luxury goods for Sharon, vacations, but it grew. Nearly 200,000 siphoned in 3 years. The room swam. Why didn't anyone stop him? He was careful, and you were a minor. Banks assume the guardian is acting in good faith, but now... He tapped the file. Now we have the evidence. I wanted to run, to crawl back under the covers, but Grandma's hand found mine. Darling, knowledge is power. He kept you ignorant, because ignorance made you vulnerable. That ends here. The days blurred into a routine designed not just to protect me, but to forge me into something new. In the mornings, a woman named Miss Catherine arrived. Tall, elegant, her posture impeccable, she introduced herself as a consultant in etiquette and confidence training. "Not to change who you are," she assured me, "but to give you tools. Courtrooms, depositions, public eyes, they are all performances. Learn the rules and you can choose when to follow them, or when to break them." At first, I resisted. Sitting straighter in a chair felt pointless when my father had already reduced me to nothing. But Miss Catherine was relentless. She corrected my shoulders with a gentle hand, guided my walk until each step carried weight, taught me how to look someone in the eye without flinching. "You've been making yourself small for years," she said, "shrinking to survive, but you are not small. Don't let him convince you otherwise." Her words lodged deep, uncomfortable, but undeniable. In the afternoons, I met with Dr. Reeves, a therapist Grandma had arranged. His office was tucked into a quiet wing of the house, warm with books and low lamps. At first, I hated going, hated the idea of being dissected like a specimen, but he didn't prod. He listened. And when I finally confessed that I still dreamed of the station, of waiting for my father to come back, he didn't judge. "Do you want him to come back in those dreams?" he asked gently. I thought about it, really thought. "No, I want him to see me not needing him." Dr. Reeves smiled faintly. That's progress. Evenings were the hardest. The war room glowed with lamplight as the legal team combed through documents, emails, even social media posts. Ms. Rodriguez, a sharp young lawyer with eyes like a hawk, handed me a printed exchange between my parents. "Your father explicitly told your mother, the kid is worth $10 million at 18, and I'm not letting that slip away." The kid. Not Alara, not daughter. The kid. My chest constricted with fury so sharp it left me trembling. "We can use this?" I asked, voice brittle. "Oh, yes," Ms. Rodriguez said, a grim smile tugging her lips. "This proves motive. Combined with abandonment, it's damning." But it wasn't just about evidence. Grandma insisted I be involved in every step. Ignorance is weakness. I will not let him keep you weak. So I learned. About trusts. About fiduciary duty. About custody law. Each lesson a brick in the wall we were building against him. Some nights, exhaustion pinned me. But then I remembered his back as he walked away, Sharon's cold smile at the glass doors, Brittany's glance. Pity or victory? I still couldn't tell. Rage lit me up again, kept me awake, kept me pushing. One evening, as I sat reviewing statements with Grandma, I whispered, "He was going to destroy me, my life, for money." She closed the folder with deliberate calm. "He still might try. That's why we prepare. That's why you must be strong." I looked at her, at the steel in her spine, and realized she wasn't just protecting me. She was grooming me for war. And deep inside, where grief and fear had lived, something else had begun to grow. The courthouse smelled of polished wood, paper, and nerves. Even before the bailiff called us in, the air buzzed with whispers, footsteps, the shuffle of lawyers adjusting files. My new blazer, chosen carefully by Miss Catherine to be professional but not intimidating, itched at the back of my neck. I tugged at the sleeves, trying to keep my hands from trembling. Grandma's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. "Remember posture," she whispered. "And remember, truth is on our side." Truth. It sounded so solid when she said it. Inside my chest, truth felt slippery, like a stone I couldn't grip without cutting myself. We stepped into the courtroom. My father was already there. He looked smaller somehow, despite the expensive suit. His jaw was tight, his eyes bloodshot. Sharon sat behind him, makeup flawless, expression pinched. When his gaze finally met mine, he didn't smile, didn't even frown. He just looked through me, as if I were an inconvenience in line at the grocery store. I forced myself to meet his eyes anyway, the way Miss Catherine had drilled me to. "Don't flinch. Don't look away first." "All rise," the bailiff called, and Judge Martinez swept in, short, sharp-eyed, her black robe billowing like a warning. She took her seat with the weight of authority that silenced the room. The proceedings began. My father's attorney, a tall man with 2 white teeth, painted my father as a victim of misunderstanding. "Mr. Wynne was attempting to arrange therapeutic care for his daughter," he said smoothly. "She fled before arrangements could be finalized. Mrs. Hartley, his mother, then seized the opportunity to interfere, motivated by her own long-standing conflicts with her son." I wanted to laugh, but the sound would have broken something in me. Therapeutic care? As if abandonment were treatment. Mr. Chen rose, his tone precise, his evidence laid out like surgical instruments. Security footage played on a large monitor. Me calling after my father, backpack clutched, tears streaking. Him walking away, his hand sliding around Sharon's waist, his new family in tow. The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. Even Sharon shifted uncomfortably, her hands tightening around her designer bag. Judge Martinez's voice cut through. "Counselor," she said to my father's attorney, "what I see here is not a misunderstanding. What I see is abandonment of a minor. Don't insult this court by suggesting otherwise." My father's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Next came the financial evidence. Bank statements, credit cards in my name, emails, where he referred to me only as the kid. Each document was a blade, carving away any chance he had at feigning innocence. When it was my turn to speak, my legs felt like glass. Miss Catherine's training pulsed in my memory. Stand tall, breathe deep, claim your space. I rose and walked to the witness stand, the room stretching and shrinking at the same time. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" the bailiff asked. "Yes," I said, though my voice wavered. I sat. The microphone loomed, too close. Miss Rodriguez gave me an encouraging nod from the table. "Elara," Mr. Chen began gently, "can you tell the court what happened on the afternoon of November 18th? I swallowed. My throat was desert dry. "My dad picked me up from my mom's. He said we were going on a trip to sort things out. I thought it meant a weekend away. I packed a bag. He drove me to Central Station. We didn't talk much. He was cold." I forced myself to continue. "When we got there, he gave me my backpack. I asked if he was coming with me. He said I was old enough to figure things out. Then he walked away. Sharon and her kids were waiting. He put his arm around her and left with them. He didn't come back." The words shook as they left me, but they filled the room, undeniable. Across the aisle, my father shifted, his face red. For the first time, he opened his mouth. "That's not—" "Mr. Wynne," Judge Martinez snapped, gavel striking once, "you will remain silent until addressed." His lawyer tugged him back down, whispering furiously. I steadied myself. "I waited 6 hours," I said, softer now. 6 hours, thinking he'd return. He didn't. He never meant to. A heavy silence followed, the kind that presses down on every rib. "Thank you, Elara," Judge Martinez said, her tone gentler than I expected. "That will be all." I stepped down, knees trembling, but when I returned to my seat, Grandma squeezed my hand. Her grip was steady. By the end of the hearing, the decision was clear. Judge Martinez's words landed like thunder. "Temporary custody is granted to Mrs. Hartley pending full review. Mr. Wynne, you are ordered to have no contact with your daughter except through supervised channels. Furthermore, financial accounts will be frozen pending investigation of fraud allegations. Consider yourself warned. Criminal charges may follow." The gavel cracked again. The The sound echoed inside me like the first real piece of safety I'd felt in years. But even as relief washed over me, I caught the look on my father's face. Not defeat, not remorse. And I knew this battle was only beginning. The gavel's echo still rang in my ears long after we left the courthouse. Outside, cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, voices blurring into one chaotic demand for answers. Grandma's lawyers formed a protective wall around us, guiding me through the swarm as though I were someone important, someone worth shielding. I wanted to believe them, but part of me still felt like the girl on the cold bench, abandoned, forgotten. Back at the estate, the war room blazed with activity. Newspapers were already printing headlines. Father accused of abandoning daughter at train station. Social media was aflame with clips from the courtroom. Some people believed my father's narrative, painting me as troubled, Grandma as manipulative, but many more were outraged. Strangers defended me with hashtags I couldn't bring myself to read. "You'll need to get used to this," Ms. Rodriguez said, sliding a tablet across the table. "This case is already bigger than us. Every move your father makes will be public. Every lie he tells, magnified." I scrolled through posts until my chest tightened. People I'd never met were dissecting my life, debating my worth as if I were a stock on the market. I set the tablet down, shaking. "I don't want to be famous," I muttered. Grandma's eyes softened for a heartbeat. "Fame isn't the point, darling. Truth is, and truth has a way of demanding an audience." The depositions began. 3 days in a sterile conference room, my father's lawyers firing questions designed to break me. "Isn't it true," one demanded, "that you've been diagnosed with depression?" "Yes," I answered evenly. "After my parents' divorce and my mother's alcoholism, I've been managing it with therapy, successfully." "Isn't it true you've had behavioral problems at school?" "I had detention once," I replied, "because my dad forgot to pick me up and I was late after walking 3 miles. Their questions pressed like knives, but Ms. Rodriguez had prepared me well. Each answer was a shield. When one attorney sneered, "You seem very coached," I met his eyes and said, "I've learned to protect myself. Abandonment will do that." The silence that followed was victory enough. Evidence kept pouring in, damning him further. Old business partners surfaced, telling stories of unpaid loans and broken promises. Sharon's first husband submitted testimony about financial manipulation during their divorce. Even Brittany's teacher reached out, willing to testify about the bruises she'd noticed and the sudden change in the girl's demeanor after Sharon remarried my father. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source, Connor, Sharon's 8-year-old son. Child Services had subpoenaed his tablet after a concerned teacher reported his withdrawn behavior. Inside, they found diary entries. Simple, heartbreaking lines that cut sharper than any lawyer's argument. October 3rd. Mom says we're rich now, but Mike yells about money all the time. November 15th. Mike said Alara is going away forever soon. Mom smiled. November 18th. Mike hurt Mom's arm. She said she fell. She didn't fall. I read those entries with a lump in my throat the size of a fist. Connor, too small to understand the weight of his words, had unknowingly exposed everything. Dad's cruelty, Sharon's complicity, the premeditation of my abandonment. My stomach twisted. "He wrote this while I was waiting at the station," I whispered. "Yes," Mr. Chen confirmed, "and it confirms what we've argued from the start. This was no accident. It was planned." Planned. The words soured in my mouth. Dad hadn't just left me behind in a moment of weakness. He'd orchestrated it, strategized it, like I was a pawn to be moved off the board. Media frenzy escalated. News anchors dissected every angle, calling it the Wynn custody war. Commentators argued about greed, legacy, parental duty. My father held a press conference on the courthouse steps, Sharon at his side dabbing fake tears. "My daughter has always been troubled," he told reporters, his voice cracking on cue. "I was trying to get her help, professional help. My mother, well, she has her own agenda. This is all a smear campaign." But the cracks showed. When a reporter asked why he'd gone on vacation immediately after abandoning me, he fumbled. Another asked about the trust fund, and Sharon's mask slipped, her hand tightening on his arm, her eyes darting with panic. Then came the killing blow. A journalist from the Washington Post stood and said, "Mr. Wynn, we've obtained documents showing you opened multiple credit cards in your daughter's name. Care to explain?" The live feed cut to commercial, but not before catching the flash of fear on his face. That moment replayed online for millions to see. At night, I lay awake in the blue room, the silence pressing in around me. I thought of Brittany and Connor. They hadn't asked for this. Sharon's ambition had trapped them in a web of lies just as surely as my father's greed had trapped me. Sometimes adults make terrible choices, Dr. Reeves said during therapy, but children should never pay the price. So I wrote them letters. To Brittany, I explained that none of this was her fault, that adults could be cruel and selfish, but she didn't need to carry their guilt. To Connor, I simply said I admired his bravery and that he wasn't alone. Brittany never responded. But weeks later, Rosa handed me an envelope with a child's scrawl. Inside was a drawing. A girl sitting on a bench, a train behind her, walking away strong. I stared at it until my vision blurred. Connor understood more than I'd realized. One evening, Grandma found me by the window, staring out at the moonlit gardens. "He's losing," she said simply, pouring herself a glass of brandy. "Every lie is unraveling." I turned to her, voice low. "Then why do I still feel like he could take everything away?" Her gaze was steady, unyielding. "Because you know what he's capable of. But remember this, Alara. He's no longer the only one playing the game, and we have truth on our side." I nodded, but deep down I knew truth alone might not be enough. Dad wasn't done fighting. And the real war was still coming. The criminal trial that would decide not just custody, but his freedom. The courthouse steps looked different this time. No longer just marble and shadow, but a stage crowded with cameras, protest signs, and the curious stares of strangers. Banners fluttered in the morning breeze. Justice for Alara scrawled on some, family values first on others. I couldn't tell which group unsettled me more, the ones who defended me or the ones who still believed my father's lies. Inside, the federal courtroom was colder, larger, and hungrier than the family court had been. This wasn't about custody anymore. This was about crimes, and the possibility that my father might leave the building in shackles. I wore the navy dress Grandma had bought me, respectful but simple. My hands shook as I fastened the buttons that morning. "You don't have to go," she reminded me, eyes gentler than usual. "You've already given your deposition." But I shook my head. "I need to see this through." She didn't argue. She just squeezed my hand and led me in. The prosecution started strong. Ms. Davies, the lead prosecutor, had a presence that made even silence lean in to listen. She opened with the footage. Me on that cold bench, calling after my father, my small figure shrinking while he walked away. The jury watched in weighted silence. A few wiped at their eyes. "This case," Ms. Davies said firmly, "is not about money. It is about betrayal. A father who viewed his daughter not as a child to love, but as an obstacle and a resource. When he could not access her inheritance, he abandoned her, discarded her like refuse. Today, we will prove it was not only heartless, but criminal." Her words landed like stones on water, sending ripples through the room. The evidence was suffocating in its detail. Bank records, tracing the siphoning of funds from accounts meant for me. Credit cards in my name, maxed out with charges for Sharon's jewelry, resort stays, and designer coats. Emails where he coldly referred to me as the kid, a liability, a problem to solve. Then came Connor's diary, read aloud by Child Services. His small voice echoed in my head as the entries were recited. Mike said Alara is going away forever soon. Mom smiled. The jury stiffened. Sharon shifted uncomfortably in her chair. And then Sharon herself took the stand. I had expected her to defend him, to twist herself into knots, protecting the fragile glass tower of her perfect family image. But instead, she cut it down herself. "Yes," she said flatly, her voice trembling but steady enough to wound. "Richard planned it, weeks in advance. He said if he left her at the station, she'd be desperate, easy to control later. He said she was worth $10 million. Gasps rustled through the courtroom. I froze, my heart beating so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. Hearing the words from Sharon's mouth made it real in a way even the evidence hadn't. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. I thought he was taking her to a boarding school. I didn't know he'd just leave her." A lie, I knew it. Ms. Davies knew it. The text proved it. But still, the damage was done. My father's own wife had buried him. When it was my turn to testify, my legs carried me forward, even though every instinct screamed to run. I sat, swore the oath, and gripped the wooden edge of the stand as though it might hold me together. Ms. Davies asked gently, "Alara, can you tell us about November 18th? I told them everything. The silent car ride, his hand shoving the backpack into my arms, the moment I saw Sharon and her children waiting, realization hitting like a blow. The hours on the bench, each one longer than the last. The granola bar I stretched into a meal. The tears I couldn't stop. Were you afraid?" she asked softly. I nodded, the lump in my throat burning. I thought I might die there, that no one would ever know what happened to me. My father didn't look at me as I spoke. His eyes stayed fixed on the table, but I could feel the heat of his anger radiating across the room. His lawyer tried to poke holes. "Isn't it true you've exaggerated the timeline? That your memory may be clouded by trauma?" I lifted my chin the way Miss Catherine had taught me. "No, I was there for 6 hours and 14 minutes. I know because I watched every minute tick by on that clock." I pointed to the footage still frozen on the monitor, the clock tower looming above me. The lawyer faltered. The jury watched me, not him. Finally, my father demanded to testify. Against every warning, his ego drove him to the stand. At first, he tried charm. I did my best. I raised her. I paid for everything. I thought she needed tough love. With her trust fund money, Ms. Davies interjected sharply. His composure cracked. "That money should have been mine," he exploded, slamming his fist on the stand. "I built that company with my father." "You were 12 when your father founded it," Ms. Davies cut in smoothly. "What exactly did you build?" The jury chuckled darkly. My father flushed. Then he spiraled, blaming Grandma, blaming me, even blaming Sharon. And when shown the footage again, he sneered. "She looks fine. I don't see what the big deal is." A juror audibly gasped. The mask was gone. He wasn't the misunderstood father anymore. He was exposed, raw, cruel. Deliberation took only 2 hours. The jury filed back, faces grim. "Guilty," the foreman announced, voice steady. "On all counts: fraud, identity theft, child abandonment, and violation of guardianship duties." The courtroom erupted. Sharon buried her face in her hands. My grandmother squeezed mine so tightly I thought the bones might fuse together. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following month. Maximum, 25 years. Minimum, 8. As guards led my father away, he turned once, eyes meeting mine across the room. Not with regret, not with sorrow, with rage. I waited for the stab of pain, the collapse of grief, but all I felt was nothing. For the first time, he was a stranger. And for the first time, I was free. Sentencing day came with a sky the color of iron. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps, their breath frosting the air as if even winter wanted to witness the end. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. I sat beside Grandma, my palms slick despite the coolness of the room. When my father entered in his orange jumpsuit, shackled and thinner than I remembered, whispers rippled through the gallery. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out shell of the man who had once called himself my protector. Yet even then, when his eyes found mine, they burned with the same old fury. Judge Coleman presided, his voice carrying the weight of years. "Mr. Wynne, I have reviewed the evidence, the testimony, and the damage caused. Rarely in my career have I seen such deliberate cruelty toward a child." His gavel tapped once, like a warning shot. Then it was my turn. I stood, legs trembling but voice steady, to deliver my victim impact statement. I had rewritten it 17 times, whittling away anger until only truth remained. "You were supposed to protect me," I began, looking directly at him. "That's the most basic job of a parent, keep your child safe. But you didn't just fail, you chose to be the danger I needed protection from. I spent years thinking I wasn't good enough, that if I tried harder, you would love me the way you loved Sharon's kids. But I understand now, you never loved any of us. You only loved yourself." His jaw tightened, but I kept going. "I'm not asking for the maximum sentence because I want revenge. I'm asking for it because maybe, somewhere, another father will think twice before treating his child like a burden. You abandoned me at that train station, but you set me free. I found a real family. I found strength you couldn't take from me. I'm going to college. I'm going to use the name Blackwood. Grandpa's name, not yours. You thought you were throwing me away, but you only revealed who you are. And now everyone knows." The courtroom was silent, heavy with the truth I had laid bare. Judge Coleman nodded gravely. 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of early release for the first 10. Restitution of all stolen funds. and no contact with your daughter unless she initiates it. The gavel came down, final and unyielding. My father sagged as if the sound itself had broken his spine. When guards led him away, he turned once, eyes searching for weakness in mine. He found none. Life afterward didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became mine. Sharon filed for separation, her perfect world shattered. Child Services placed Brittany and Connor with Sharon's sister in another state. I wrote them both letters. Simple words telling them none of this was their fault. Brittany never replied, but Connor sent back a drawing, a girl at a station bench, walking away, strong. I kept it pinned above my desk. My mother, after years of drowning in bottles, finally clawed her way to sobriety. We met for coffee sometimes, the air tentative but real. She would never be my parent again, but maybe, someday, she could be something else, something honest. On my 18th birthday, the trust fund became mine. I barely touched it. Grandma had taught me money was a tool, not a prize. I used enough for college, enough for therapy, enough to start a foundation for abandoned children. The rest I left waiting, ready for a future I hadn't yet built. 5 years later, I returned to Central Station. Not the same bench. It had been replaced with newer, softer ones, but the same spot under the looming clock. The air smelled of coffee and iron rails, just as it had that day. Only this time, I wasn't alone. Connor sat beside me, taller now, 13, his face shadowed with adolescence but still carrying the softness of the boy who once wrote in his tablet. He swung his legs, sneakers scuffing the floor. "Were you really here for 6 hours?" he asked quietly. 6 hours and 14 minutes, I said. "I know, because I watched every minute tick by on that clock." He nodded, gaze heavy. "I'm sorry my mom was part of it." I rested a hand on his shoulder. "You're not responsible for your parents' choices. Trust me." I learned that the hard way. We sat in silence, watching travelers rush past. Families hugged, laughed, argued, carried bags. Normal people, living normal lives. Connor broke the quiet. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he came back? If he changed his mind?" I thought about it. Really thought. "I would have gone with him," I admitted. I was so desperate for his love, I would have forgiven anything. And that would have been the real tragedy, spending my life begging for love from someone incapable of giving it. My phone buzzed. A text from Grandma. "Dinner at 7. Made your favorite. Home. Real home. Not the house where silence grew heavy. Not the bench where hope rotted. Home with someone who chose me." I stood, shouldering my bag. "Come on," I told Connor, smiling faintly. "Let's go home." As we walked toward the exit, I glanced back once at the bench. The girl who had sat there, terrified, abandoned, small, was still part of me. But she was no longer all of me. She was the cocoon I had broken free from, wings stronger than I ever believed possible. Dad had been right about one thing that day. I was old enough to figure things out, and I did.